Welcome and thank you for joining us this afternoon for today's Lunch and Learn, Understanding Food Allergies. My name is Kathy Churn and I'm a consumer health librarian at East Brunswick Public Library. Today's program is brought to you by St. Peter's University Hospital and the library's Just for the Health of It initiative to promote community health and wellness. Our speaker today is Laura Vetter, RDN, CDCES, outpatient dietitian at St. Peter's University Hospital in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Please be aware that this talk is being recorded. Participants' microphones are automatically muted and webcams off. When ready, the recording will be available at ebpl.org/YouTube. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. Our speaker will answer questions at the end of the talk. Our speaker will not be able to offer medical advice to attendees during this program. And without further ado, I'll turn things over to Laura.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this afternoon. I hope this all finds you well. And I'm pleased to be here today to talk to you about food allergies. Again, if you have any questions, enter them into the chat and I will be happy to address them at the end of the talk. I will have a lot of information on the slides, so if you want to take notes, please feel free to take notes, and then in viewing it once it's available as a recording, if you have any questions, I did tell Kathy that she is welcome to share my contact information, and I do have it on the last slide also. So today we're going to be discussing food allergies and a couple different areas of food allergies. There is a lot of information again, so we'll go through things at a rather quick speed. However, we'll cover everything so that you could get a better understanding. So today we're going to discuss food allergies versus food intolerances. We're going to look at the allergic reaction process. We're going to also be able to define symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment of food allergies, noting the top 10 food allergens, which are always a big topic, looking at food label and the hidden allergens and areas that hidden allergens can become in. We'll look at cross reactions, the oral allergy syndrome, and of course, planning ahead for times when we're not at home or planning for food allergy treatments. So the first topic is going to be the allergies versus intolerances. And many people that come to see me at the hospital for outpatient counseling, when I do ask about food allergies, they will tell me one of three things. They will tell me a definitive allergy that they do have that was diagnosed through blood work or through their medical physician doing testing. Or they will tell me, well, I don't feel well when I have milk, so that's more of an intolerance. Or they'll tell me that they don't like something. So all three of those are very different. So I just want to show you the difference between a specific food allergy versus a food intolerance. So a food allergy, as defined, is any adverse reaction to an otherwise harmless food or component of food that involves the body's immune system. So that's the biggest part, is that underline that it involves the body's immune system. A food intolerance, on the other hand, is more difficulty digesting a particular food or a component of food that usually will result in abdominal pain, bloating, gas, or diarrhea. So that's our intolerance. And a lot of people will link that with lactose intolerance. And again, a food intolerance does not involve the immune system where the allergy does. As far as allergies, approximately 2% of all adults and 4 to 8% of children in the US have a diagnosed food allergy. That accounts for about 15 million people. So it's a lot of people, and that number is growing. And for those of you that have children in school-age children, thinking about that as 1 out of every 13 children, or approximately 2 children per classroom. So as time has gone on, we've seen that number growing. And it's not only that it's one food allergy, it could be multiple food allergies. And that's another part when we do talk about each individual food allergen for those top 10 allergens, how we have children with multiple of those too. So family history is another question that I get asked about when I'm seeing someone with a food allergy or a child with a food allergy, is that parents are very concerned that their child or other children will then develop food allergies too. So the ability to become allergic to a food is inherited to some degree. Children that have one allergic parent are 2 times more likely to develop a food allergy. It does not mean that that child will develop a food allergy to the same food as a parent, but they can develop other food allergies. Again, this is immune-based. If our immune system has any inherited component of allergies, it can then develop a food allergy more quickly. Children that have both parents with food allergies are 4 times more likely to develop food allergies. So again, that number is going to increase. And 1 out of 10 siblings of children with a food allergy will develop a food allergy. So again, it might not be the same food allergy, which makes it even trickier for parents because then you're dealing with multiple food allergies within the household. So the allergic reaction process is a 2-step process. And there are many times when people will say, oh, I've eaten that food before and I've never had a problem with it. And now I'm experiencing a reaction. And that's likely because of that first part, that part 1 of the allergic reaction process. So on our first exposure to an allergen, usually via what we ate, however, with peanuts, dust or touch can be the reaction or the first exposure. And sometimes with fish, the same thing, the aroma and the particles in the air can be that first exposure. So with this first part of the allergic reaction, our immune system reacts as if a food is foreign to us, and it makes a specific immunoglobulin, which is IgE, antibodies, to that allergen. So it's trying to say that there's something not right here. I'm going to try to protect the body a little bit. Those antibodies circulate through our blood and attach to our mast cells. And our mast cells are found in our nose, our throat, our lungs, our skin, our GI tract. Any mucosa will usually have our mast cells. And it also attaches to our basophils, which are our white blood cells, and those try to protect us. So this is at part 1. So we might not have a reaction necessarily during this stage, but our body's starting to recognize that something is different in the body. On our second exposure to that same allergen, this is where we will usually have that reaction. So now that intake that we had, whether again, it's through touch, through consumption of the food item, or again, sometimes even through the air, our antibodies are going to attach to that mast cell and those basophils again. So now we already have that reaction that happened. So now that signal that is going to now become well known to the body is going to make a chemical reaction, which will include releasing our histamines, our prostaglandins, and our leukotrienes. And I know those are big words, but that's the part of the allergic process that's going to have a reaction in our body. And histamines is a word that a lot of us know of because when we have an allergy, even if it's a seasonal allergy, we take antihistamines. So we want to stop those histamines from flaring up in the body. And this reaction is going to cause the various symptoms of food allergy reactions. And we're going to talk about those symptoms. So there's many different symptoms for food allergies and everyone's can be different. So it's not saying that someone who is allergic to eggs, for example, is going to have the same allergic reaction to another person that's allergic to eggs. Everyone can have a different reaction. Most common symptoms are going to include itching in the mouth, swelling of our lips and tongues, any GI upset, so vomiting, diarrhea, cramps, or abdominal pain. Hives is a very common one, so that physical, visible reaction that we see. Worsening of eczema or atopic dermatitis, a tightening of the throat, coughing, wheezing, difficulty breathing, and a lowering of the blood pressure. When we have children who are very young and we're introducing them to new foods, many children at that age when we're introducing foods aren't verbal yet. So there is no way for them to say, my mouth is itchy. So we need to look for other signs and symptoms, especially with children. Some children who are a little bit older can tell us that a food is spicy because they're having a reaction in their mouth, but they don't know how to describe it. So if you know that you're making a food that is definitely not spicy and your child is telling you that it doesn't taste right or it's spicy, that's a clue that we need to delve into a little bit more to see if something else is going on. They can also report their tongue as being hot, something's hurting their tongue, scratching their tongue as if there's hair in their mouth, if they're trying to get hair out of their mouth, something being stuck in their throat where you see them grabbing or scratching at their throat. And they could also start rubbing their ears as if there's something in their ears. We call it like bugs in the ears, where they're trying to figure out what's happening by their head and neck area and their ears. So again, it's different clues that you have to look for, especially with young children that are nonverbal, and introducing new foods for them. Also, with our symptoms, the symptoms don't have to happen immediately. So the timing of our symptoms could be minutes to hours after exposure. So we also have to think back, which is hard to do when we do a food recall. Trying to think back to what you ate 2 days ago is a very difficult thing to do. So just noting when you're, especially with children or yourself, is having a new food, noting that I'm having something totally different today. To note if you have a reaction, it might not happen right away. The process of eating and digestion and the location of our mast cells affect the timing and location of the reaction also. Our clinical symptoms typically involve our skin, our GI tract, and our respiratory tract. So our skin would be that hives that are very common, or that eczema that we see. Our GI tract can be anything from that nausea to vomiting, diarrhea, any kind of reaction like that bloating or gas. And our respiratory tract is going to be that tightness of the throat, wheezing, coughing. Symptoms can aggravate eczema. However, food allergies are not an underlying cause of asthma. And the diagnosis of food allergies is through our medical history, looking at specific foods and intake of specific foods, looking at the amount eaten and the reaction that somebody's maybe having, the time between consumption of the food and development of symptoms. So if we had something today and next week we're having a reaction, chances are it's not related to something that we ate today. However, again, looking at that 72-hour window as being a possibility. How often is the reaction occurring? So is it a new food that you're having consistently? Or is it something that you have randomly? And of course, on physical exam too, to see any physical signs as far as hives or eczema. With diagnosis, we can also look to do an elimination diet or a skin prick and scratch test for further diagnosis. So with the elimination diet, it's eliminating all sources of the food allergen for at least 21 days to see if any symptoms recur during that period of time. So for someone who does not know why their body is reacting or what it is reacting to, we do a very strict elimination diet, which is going back to the basics. It's having foods that are very plain and taking out those top 10 allergens. And after 21 days, we can start introducing one allergen at a time over a period of time to see if there's any symptoms that do occur. So it's a tedious process. However, it's extremely important in diagnosing food allergies, especially for adults too. Many of you are familiar with a skin prick or scratch test, and this is where diluted extract is placed under the skin or scratched into the skin or punctured into the skin. And after 30 minutes, the allergist will look for any reactions to the skin during that time. The test is affected by antihistamine use. So if you are going to be going for a test for food allergies, don't take an antihistamine prior, and your allergist will tell you that. And this is an example of our skin prick or scratch test where the allergen is, again, injected under the skin or scratched under the skin. And we could look for the changes to the skin 30 minutes later. Also, blood work can help to diagnose food allergies. There is a caution that I will talk about regarding blood work though. So the blood work will look for the IgE antibodies to specific foods. And many times people will get a whole panel of food allergens tested, and it's not affected by antihistamine use. So you can use an antihistamine prior to it. And this is my caution, is that different labs use different scoring for the results. If someone comes to me with a known allergen to eggs and they get their blood work done, many times they will come to me and say, okay, now I'm avoiding a lot of foods because of my blood work. And the blood work will usually range from a 1 being basically a non-existent allergen to a 5, meaning that there's a pretty significant food allergen that's being detected in your body, or reaction to food in your body. And there are many people that are avoiding foods that are between that 1 and 3 level because of the blood work, yet they're not having any reaction to that food item. So I do usually try to work with people on, unless we're having a physical reaction to that item, to still include those within the diet, because it can be safely eaten many times. Yet if someone has a 3 and they're having a reaction to that food item, of course, we're not going to be using it. And again, the different labs have different values. So you may go to one lab that does a 1 through 5 scoring, yet you may go to another lab that does a 1 through 6 scoring. So you do have to be aware that we want to be able to, if you're comparing labs, to use it from the same lab or with the same scoring. And the other part of the diagnosis is the food challenge, which is very similar to, in a sense, including those food items, yet this is for a known diagnosis of a food allergen. So with the food allergen food challenge, this is done under a direct supervision in an allergen's office, where a child or an adult is given a food item that they have a known allergen to. And with this, it provokes that food allergy. Yet we can use food challenges, and I will talk about the oral food allergy challenges that are used to help combat food allergens in kids too. So this is a little bit, trickier when we're diagnosing and we're giving someone something that we really have a feeling that they're going to be allergic to within an office setting, yet it's done under medical supervision. So with treatment for food allergens, of course, number 1 is to avoid that food allergen. And I still find that sometimes for especially adults with new food allergies to be tricky, that it's a food that they may have tolerated their whole life, and they know they could tolerate a little bit of it without getting hives. And it's still an allergen, so we want to avoid the food product as much as possible. We always want to prepare for accidental exposure to food items with antihistamines and an EpiPen if prescribed by your physician. And then with the oral immunotherapy, the IOT challenges, this is what I was just mentioning with treatment of food allergens. So there are allergists that work with providing patients a specific, extremely small amount of the food allergen, and over time it helps to create exposure to that food item for that child or an adult, and it's meant to desensitize them. So that we have found that with oral immunotherapy, that children with peanut allergies and severe peanut allergies or tree nut allergies can now be exposed to those peanuts or tree nuts, whether it's through consumption or through accidental exposure, that they don't have a reaction, or they have enough time to treat the reaction that they're having. So I do have a nephew who is allergic to peanuts and tree nuts. And through the OIT, he is up to eating, I believe it's now 6 peanut M&Ms every day. And he's up to, I believe it's about 8.8 grams of tree nuts every day. And that is something that has to be continued every single day. So when he does increase his treatment for, or his dosing of the tree nuts or the peanuts, that is done in his allergens office. And he has to stay there for a few hours to see if there's any reaction. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have an itchy throat or an itchy mouth, but it's desensitizing him. So it's out there. It is an option for people that want to look into that further. Now I'm going to move on to the top 10 food allergens, and I'm going to talk about each one of them to some degree, but again, there's going to be more information on the slides for you that if you are watching once it is recorded and available to you. If you have any further questions, please reach out. So our top 8 food allergens are going to be our milk, shellfish, milk, eggs, fish, our crustacean, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, and soybeans. So they're pretty significant ones. And for allergens, thinking of our age groups, infants and children, the most common are going to be our egg, milk, peanut, tree nut, soy, and wheat. And there is a really good chance that children can outgrow egg, milk, and soy allergies. However, they rarely completely will outgrow peanut and tree nut. And for our adults, our common ones are shellfish, peanut, tree nut, fish. This list will probably change in about 10 years because all of those infants and children are now growing up. And I always think that weddings in about 10 years are going to be really interesting with everything that's restricted with them, whether it's the bride, the grooms, guests that are at the weddings. So taking them each separately, our milk allergy is the most common allergen in infants and children. Again, it can be outgrown with the milk avoidance for feeding them too. Formula-fed infants with an allergy can try soy milk or casein-based formulas that I'm sure most parents will be alerted to pretty quickly. Some children with a milk allergy or infants with a milk allergy also have sensitivity to soy milk, so we are always watching for that. Our sources of milk, of course, can be found in any of our milk-based products, such as butter, cream cheese, our cheeses, cream, yogurt. And the difference between, again, that milk allergy and a lactose intolerance is the lactose intolerance is usually only going to be a GI-mediated reaction, and it does not involve the immune system. And one of the areas that I caution people with any food allergies, if you are ordering deli meats, always be aware that the deli slicers can have cross-contamination with milk products or peanut products too. Another source of milk product that can be hidden is in medications too. So some of our milk product, our medications have a lactose base in them that we also would want to be aware of. With egg allergies are second most common in children, and it can be outgrown. And you will, whether you're going for your child or for yourself as an adult, if you're getting the MMR, the measles, mumps, rubella, or flu vaccine, you'll always be asked if you have an egg allergy because of the component that's within the vaccine. Sources of egg on a food label can be listed different ways. It can also be found in our pastas, marshmallows, foam on the top of beverages. if you're getting it at a coffee shop, egg substitutes, and pretzels. If you think of shiny pretzels with an egg wash on the top of them. Cross reactions are interesting with eggs because many people will think of a chicken egg as the only egg allergen, but you can react from other sources of eggs such as duck, turkey, quail, and goose. Fish allergies, about 40% of people experience their first reaction as a fish allergen as an adult. Salmon, tuna, and halibut are the most common ones. And the fish protein can be airborne in cooking. And that's why I had mentioned that as when we have that first exposure to allergens, sometimes with fish, it's airborne. Of course, sources of fish are usually fish. So there's a lot of different fish out there on the market, and any of them can be treated as or exposed as a food allergen. It can also be found in products like Caesar salad dressing or supplements such as fish oils, Worcestershire sauce, bouillabaisse, imitation fish, shellfish, and campanata. And with the imitation fish, again, it's even though it's listed as an imitation fish, a lot of times they may be using a fish sauce to reconstitute that flavor into it. Our shellfish allergy, 60% of people experience their first reaction as an adult. And I can vouch for this, that I grew up having a crab allergy, and my shellfish allergies have increased as I have become an adult. Our crustaceans, such as shrimp, crab, and lobster reactions are usually more severe than our mollusks. And our mollusks are our clams, mussels, oysters, and scallops. And I will be mentioning those mollusks when we talk about our food labeling in a bit. Sources of shellfish are listed here. And again, it can also be found in other methods that we don't necessarily think of, such as glucosamine. So glucosamine chondroitin is a common supplement for our bone health. And so thinking of our supplements that can also have shellfish within them. Our tree nut allergy is a lifelong allergy. Generally, 9% of children outgrow it, and younger siblings are at risk for developing the tree nut allergy if an older sibling does have it. Items that are not nuts are nutmeg, so our seasoning nutmeg, our water chestnuts, and our butternut squash. So even though they have nut in the wording, they are not considered a tree nut. Pink peppercorn, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, can pose also a risk if someone has a tree nut allergy. Our main sources of tree nuts, and I will name some of these because it is important, are our almonds, our Brazil nuts, our cashews, our chestnuts, hazelnuts, macadamia nuts, our pecans, pine nuts, pistachios, and our walnuts. Tree nuts can be found in, again, other items besides the nut itself, such as marzipan, which is made out of almonds, our nut oils, cereals, crackers, cookies, energy bars, flavored coffee, think hazelnuts, marinades, barbecue sauce, and mortadella, which again, that's one of those items that people can be ordering at the deli that does have nuts within it. So always knowing that if you or your child has tree nut allergies, making sure that those meat slicers are very clean or by packaged meats. With the pink peppercorn is a dried roasted berry, and it's derived from a member of the family that includes cashews and pistachios. So there has been information and studies posted about using the use of pink peppercorn in children with tree nut allergies, and they usually do have the same reaction. So it could be a place that you're going to for dinner. You know that there's no tree nuts, you've alerted them to tree nut allergies, yet there's a reaction, and pink peppercorn can be the culprit in those situations. Peanut allergy is probably the most familiar one to a lot of people, and this is usually a lifelong allergy. 20% of children will outgrow the peanut allergy though, which is nice. Peanuts are a legume. The chances to be allergic to other legumes does increase, such as beans, peas, lentils, and soy. An interesting spot that you can find peanuts is the stuffing in bean bags. So that's one of those places to be alerted to, especially if you're buying a very inexpensive toy bean bag. And we're going to name some others in a moment. Lupin and lupine are also terms that I'm going to be discussing and how they relate to peanut allergies. Our sources of peanuts can be in artificial nuts, ground nuts, and peanut flavoring, of course. It is likely going to be found in Asian, African, and Mexican dishes, and it can be also in frying oils, yet many children that have a peanut allergy can, to some extent, tolerate peanut oils. But that's, again, for you to have that discussion with your allergist. Pet food is another interesting place that it can be found. And if you have toddlers and you have animal food on the ground, always being aware that they will, of course, go to the water bowl, go to the food bowl of your animal, that if they do have a peanut allergy, to check out your animal's food too. So lupine and lupine are a legume also. They are high, it is high in protein. It can be in the powdered form. It's primarily found in other countries, yet we do see it in some products in the US, and it's more commonly being added to gluten-free products. So I have a label here, and I have it circled that it contains lupin, and it says may contain soya. Lupin is a legume related to peanuts and soy. So just being aware that that is a trigger word for food labeling if there is a peanut allergy. With wheat allergies are usually outgrown by age 3. However, they can continue. Wheat allergy is not the same as celiac disease, and buckwheat is not a wheat. So sources of buckwheat are vast because wheat is so commonly found in a lot of products. Here, it can also be found in glucose syrup, surimi, soy sauce, and starches. Always being cautious with ice cream, marinara sauce, Play-Doh, ready-made hamburgers or hot dogs, sauces, and dough ornaments, especially this time of the year. With products like ready-made hamburgers, hot dogs, and Play-Doh, we have wheat can be a component in any product, especially our shelf-stable products that will have a filler within them. So that's where we see it with hamburgers and hot dogs. And sometimes even on frozen French fries, they have a coating on them. And to get that coating to stick, they do use flours. Soy allergies are generally outgrown by age 3, most of the time by age 10. Soy is also a legume. It's widely used in processed foods, again, as a filler and to be a less expensive cost item. The FDA does exempt highly refined soybean oil as an allergen. And common sources besides seeing the word soy on a label are edamame, soy sauce, TVP or tempeh or tamari, tofu, and it's commonly found in Asian cuisines. So food shopping can be hard enough with having one food allergen. But if we think about children and adults with multiple food allergies, let's say someone's allergic to soy, peanut, tree nuts, milk, and eggs, we are now looking for all of these words on a food label. So it can become extremely overwhelming for a parent, a caregiver, or yourself if you're dealing with the food allergies to conquer that shopping trip. And I sympathize with you, yet we're here to help you. So if you ever have any questions about how to analyze your blood work results and what can I have, what can't I have, please reach out because what I want to do is help make this list understandable for you. With food labeling, we do want to look at how our labels can read for those food, for the top allergens, and labels must be clearly identified for the source of the food allergen with the 8 most common food allergies. Sometimes they're listed 2 different ways. They could be listed in parentheses following the ingredient in the label, and I'm going to show you an example in a moment, or immediately after or next to the list of ingredients in a contains statement. The food labeling does not apply to potential or unintentional presence of major allergens in foods that can result from cross-contamination situations in manufacturing. The FDA does recommend that advisory statement is on there, such as it may processed in a factory, but it is not required. Kosher labeling is not accurate for food allergies, and non-dairy does not mean milk-free. So again, looking at that milk allergy as being a tricky one to decipher on a food label. Natural flavoring also can be tricky because it doesn't have to specify what those natural flavors can be. And as I mentioned before about mollusks, so mollusks being, again, our mussels, our clams, oysters, scallops, those are not considered a shellfish under the major allergens. So they may not be disclosed on a food label. So just to show you ways that food allergens can be on a food label. So if you look on the nutrition facts on the left-hand side, you will see that where it has enriched flour directly after, it says wheat flour. So it's specifying that it's there. Where it has whey, it has milk in parentheses, indicating that food allergen. And on the right side, it will have it all on the bottom under the contains statement. So this one says contains wheat, egg, wheat, milk, egg, and soy. So it can be listed either way. And again, here's two examples, on the left being a contains statement and on the right being within the ingredient list. Hidden sources of allergens are vast. Thinking in school situations, counting or sorting beans, pastas, craft, using other cartons. So if you're using egg cartons or milk cartons for a project in school, noting that. Finger paint can contain wheat, milk, corn, or oat. Potting soil, surprisingly, potting soil, something simple, you would think it's soil, it's dirt, can also contain fillers such as nuts and seeds. As I mentioned, Play-Doh or craft paste can contain wheat. Of course, our macaroni art, our pastas can contain wheat and egg. Tempera paints with egg, crayons may have soy in them. Thinking at home, shaving cream can have milk in it, surprisingly. Dustless chalk can have casein or another milk-based product in it. Our sunscreen and lotions can have tree nut oil extracts. Hair products can have nut oils. Our cosmetics can have soy or milk. Our stuffed toys, as I mentioned with those bean bags, especially inexpensive ones, can run the risk of having crushed or ground nut shells in them. And think of the door blockers, especially this time of year to get drafts out of the house. Those can also. And as I mentioned, pet food too. Cross reactions can happen with, if you have a food allergen, known food allergen already, there are cross reactions that can happen with other foods. Just to become more aware, if you know you have one food allergy, chances are you could develop other food allergies too. One of the ones that people don't really think about is thinking of poison ivy. Poison ivy, it's the oils in poison ivy that people react to for a skin reaction. I know no one's eating poison ivy. However, people that have poison ivy or are susceptible to poison ivy can react more to pistachios, cashews, and mango because those products have the same urushiol oil in them that poison ivy has. So it's one of those seasonal allergies or environmental outside allergies that can also develop food allergies too. And never assume people know that if you have a peanut allergy that you could be reacting to something else, or if they know you have a tree nut allergy, don't assume people know what tree nuts are. Oral allergy syndrome is when we're allergic to certain raw fruits and vegetables. It can be very common in people with hay fever. It might not cause a lot of the GI symptoms, but it will cause some of our itching, tingling, sneezing symptoms that can happen. And when we have the oral allergy syndrome, sometimes we develop that pollen food syndrome also, where people that have allergens to birch, ragweed grass, and timothy grass can also react to certain foods, especially during the season that those trees or those grasses are blooming. And a few last things when we're going out and how we can protect ourselves. So with traveling, making sure you read transportation allergy policies as far as what is required by the companies that you're traveling with, whether it be plane or train, checking snack offerings, making sure you're bringing your food so you feel comfortable. And if you have any prescriptions or EpiPens, making sure you have the prescription label on them so that if you are alone, people know how to help treat you. Always having an emergency plan for yourself or your child. FARE, which is the Food Allergy and Anaphylaxis Network, has a great emergency care plan on their website, and they have a lot of great information for yourself, for caregivers, for parents, and for schools. Medical ID tags are a fantastic item for yourself or for your child that indicate food allergies too. So again, so that people know how to help treat you. And here are some great resources that help with learning more about food allergies, with giving you information that you can use, whether it's at your home setting, work setting, or school setting. And then I also have my contact information, my email, and my phone number there. With any concerns that you have or questions that relate directly to you, I would be happy to answer them for you. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Laura. So we're going to start Q&A. If anyone has any questions, you could type them into the chat box. I'll read them out loud. So we already have a couple questions coming in. So one of them is, can people grow out of an allergy, and can you develop an allergy to a food you've eaten for years?
So the answer is yes to both of those. So food allergies, many times, as I had mentioned, with children, going back to our milk allergen, especially milk allergies for infants are usually found out when we're transitioning from either breast milk or formula to cow's milk. And as long as that is found very young for children, many times we can outgrow that milk allergy, yet it's not a definite. For any of them, it's not a definite. So we can hope for a lot of them that we can outgrow or they can be minimized. Yet we can't say I wish we could say that for all of them, we can grow out of them. And then the other part of that question is, can we develop allergies as an adult? Yes, we can. I am 100% vouching for that because it's happened with me, where I was only allergic to crab as a child. And now I am allergic to crab. I'm allergic to mussels. I'm allergic to mango. I'm allergic to cashews. Those are related to that poison ivy that I mentioned. But I'm cautious with trying new foods. So we can grow out of some, yet we can develop some.
Okay, so sort of like a follow-up to that question, what triggers or causes an allergy so suddenly to food that you've been consuming for years?
So another great question. And just like many of you probably grew up with knowing no one that had a food allergy, now a lot of people have food allergies. I think it's a lot of the environmental changes that we're breathing different air. We are at a different weight range for a lot of us. So how our body's reacting differently, medications can alter our gut microbiome, which will also change our immune system. So I think it's looking at a lot of the environmental causes, not necessarily food.
And then, is it possible to cause an allergy by avoiding a certain food for a long period of time? So, for example, if you do a vegan diet and then decide to reintroduce dairy, could you become allergic to dairy?
No, you won't necessarily become allergic to a food that you've avoided for a long time. No.
And then, if you do OIT as an adult before having a child, would that lessen the probability of your child getting an allergy?
Probably not. I don't know that the answer specifically as a definitive yes or no, but I'm thinking no, only because you already have that immune response in your system. So it's almost like the genetic component is still there. You're not changing your genetics or your child's genetics. You're changing how your body is reacting in an OIT.
And then with oral allergy syndrome, has reactions to pesticides been ruled out?
I believe that you could probably react to many items. And again, that's that environmental changes, the environmental changes that we're seeing. So you can likely, pesticides, they're changing our microbiome. They're changing what's happening around us. So they can certainly play a part in the seasonal allergies and that cross reaction of them.
Oh, and then there's a comment, never saw one about shoelaces, so that's sort of neat.
Yeah, and that's great for toddlers, especially because they can't pull them off. They could pull a bracelet off, they could do other things, but they can't pull them off the top of their shoes.
Are there any other immunoglobulins like IgG that indicate food allergies? And there's a lot of confusion about this.
Yeah, so IgE is our primary one for food allergies. There we have a lot of immunoglobulins within our body, but the IgEs are going to be what's going to help to diagnose.
Is there any science behind food sensitivity tests?
So you see them a lot on TV now. I'm interested in taking one just to see what they do. A food sensitivity, again, is not an allergen. So that's more like an intolerance in a sense, likely. I would not, just like people that come to me with those very low numbers on a food allergy test without reactions, unless you're reacting to a food item, I'm hesitant to have someone eliminate it from their diet because then you become very, very restrictive in what you're eating. And the more we restrict, the more we helicopter everything around us. And we kind of do more damage to ourselves than any benefit. So I don't know specifically with all the ones that you see on TV now, and even with 23andMe, your genetic component. I don't know if any of those will delve into food allergens eventually too.
Okay. Do you see improvements when recommending organic foods?
If somebody has a food allergy, they have a food allergy, whether it is from an organic or non-organic, or you grew it yourself, it's an allergy. So you'll never see a difference. If someone has a milk allergy, they're going to be allergic to every cow's milk that's out there, no matter what the source is. So that won't make a difference in an allergen.
Is it possible to be tested as not allergic to an item and its variants and its various components, but still have a reaction whenever you eat it?
So it can be, especially if you think about intolerances versus allergies. So an intolerance to some people can be pretty significant, where you're feeling, again, lactose intolerance is going to be the number one intolerance that people will hear about, where you could have a tiny bit of milk and be out of commission for a few hours, yet you're not allergic to milk. The allergy will again have the immune component. The intolerance is more of a GI issue. So you could feel like you're allergic to something, but you're having just a very bad intolerance to it.
Do you think we will see a movement to more restaurants to closing allergens?
I hope so, and I think so. Many restaurants will now already have availability on their website to see food allergens. If you are planning on going to, especially to a chain restaurant is more likely to do that than a mom and pop restaurant because they have more resources to do that and the financial backing in a sense to do it. So if you are going to a chain restaurant, my suggestion is always look on their website for specifics. And no matter where you are going, if you are concerned about food allergens, make sure you ask to talk to the manager, talk to the person that's preparing to explain the severity of a food allergen. They would rather have you say it before than have to treat it after.
So now we'll do the last call for questions. We also have some thank yous coming in and great presentations. Thanks for your amazing presentation with a great deal of clarity.
Yeah, I know it was very condensed. It's a lot of information in a short period of time, but that's why I have my contact information for you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them via email or phone call.
Okay, so that's it for questions. So thank you, Laura, for taking your time presenting on this topic and then also for answering all of our questions. And for everyone, thank you for joining us today and take care and stay safe. All right, thank you.